Sometimes life gets in the way and technology does not want to agree with our best laid plans. So thank you. I appreciate you guys having me back again. Once again, I'm sitting outside trying to enjoy the weather as much as I possibly can. And so now and then you'll probably hear a few voices going by, or hopefully some birds singing, or something lovely and unexpected. What you're going to hear today is yet another one of my rules of the trail that I have. I have this plan someday to put these all together into a book. Hopefully that works out. But today is about stopping for a good view. And as I've said before, most of the hiking that I do, I look for destinations where I'm going to be most likely not to run into other hikers along the way. And there's a lot of reasons for this. First, I enjoy the solitude and the quiet and the independence of being alone. There's this knowledge that as a hiker out alone, everything is really up to me, that there's nobody there to push me on if I get tired, and there are no one there to share in the decisions that I make, and there's no one to pull me out if I get into trouble. It's all up to me. In that sense, solo hiking is an exercise in existentialism, that my choices make all the possible difference. But there's another reason why I go alone, and that's because I hike fast, I don't take many breaks, and most people have a hard time keeping up with my pace. And I've realized now that I'm over years old, that that's kind of been a metaphor for my life, and it may not have been the most helpful one all the time either. I also choose hikes that will require me to cover long distances in a short period of time. I plan to hike well into the night and into the darkness, and I get up at dawn and get on the trail with the sun and the birds, and I go fast, and I don't slow down until I feel like I absolutely need to. If I can cover 16 to 20 miles in a day, I think that's an okay pace. Some people would say I'm a goal-oriented hiker. Now, last year I took off to the woods of central Pennsylvania. I went to college in Pennsylvania, a school called Lycoming College, and I'm very nostalgic for that reason, because in those woods in western and central Pennsylvania, the secludedness and the beauty abound there. Not a lot of people know about that area, and not a lot of people go. There are gorgeous displays of color as mountain laurel blooms. If you've never walked through a mountain laurel forest when it was in bloom, it's just absolutely amazing. And then at the right time of year, if you look down, there are these tiny little flowers of wintergreen. And if you pick the wintergreen, you can chew on it. It tastes exactly like wintergreen gum. It's amazing. All right, I'm back on my phone. For some reason, Zoom is giving us a problem. Can anyone remember where I stopped?
Wintergreen.
Wintergreen, okay. I'll go back to the wintergreen. And I'm on my phone now, so hopefully that works a little better.
Yeah.
Zoom's been giving a lot of people problems in the last few weeks. Wintergreen. Yeah. So there are no high mountains in the area. There's nothing that reaches above the tree line. And when you're hiking in those thick woods, there's very little to see, but more trees. And when the woods become a jumble of underbrush with nothing distinctive to add color or beauty, what I do is I just march forward with intensity and purpose to just try to put miles behind me as much as I can. Sometimes that's just what needs to be done in order to get from one point to the next. And A lot of life is like that, right? Sometimes you just got to put your head down. Well, last year I was hiking along a trail called the Black Forest Trail. It's about a 40-mile trail that I had planned to hike in about 3 days or so. And it was late the first day, and I had been going along for about 5 or 6 hours through mostly flat, very heavily wooded area. And I really could see ahead of me only 50 to 100 yards or so, and there wasn't much to see. It was midsummer, and the mountain laurel blooms had wilted away. I had about 15 miles to cover that day. But since I arrived at the trail a little bit later in the afternoon, it was going to be a short day for me. I had a long way to go, though, and I knew that it would most likely be not until somewhere near dark or just before it that I reached my destination. And I approached this trail junction, and I saw blue sky open up in front of me as the trees began to drop away. And as I continued on, I could hear the sound of wind soaring through the treetops and the distant call of red-tailed hawks. And I looked down at my map, and I saw that the trail made a hard right turn and then descended deeply into a steep gully. And as I looked at the map again, I saw there was no real indication of anything to see, no overlooks, no vistas, nothing important. So again, I just put my head down and I moved on with a purpose, not expecting to see anything new. Then, for some reason, I lifted my head up and decided I should look before taking that hard right. And before me, I saw this entire valley open up. The hill dropped off steeply in front of me, and perhaps for some 1,500 feet, it just went down. And I realized I was standing at that moment in the highest point for miles. A trail led onward toward a cliff edge where rocks formed a perfect resting place. Warmed by the late afternoon sun and touched by a gentle breeze, the rock just warmed up. You could almost see some heat coming off of it. So I stopped for a moment. I looked at my watch. It was about 4 o'clock. I knew that I could hike on and make my camp not long before sunset with just enough light to set up camp and cook. Then I looked at the warm rocks and past them that awe-inspiring view, and I could have been 1,000 miles from nowhere. There was absolutely no sign of civilization. The sky was this amazing deep blue, and the hawks I could see were dipping and soaring over the valley, and the breeze blew just enough to cool my hot skin. And I looked at the rocks, and I looked at the view, and I looked at the rock-strewn gully I would eventually have to descend. And I thought, gully or warm rocks, which way do I go? And then almost without thinking, my pack dropped to the ground, my boots and my shirt came off, and I lay face up to the sun on the most comfortable rock bed I have ever felt. I sipped my cool water taken from a stream not long before, and I snacked on M&M-laden trail mix. Now, here's a note. If you're going to take trail mix on a hike, right, don't buy the store-bought stuff. Just buy M&Ms and add a few peanuts to it and call it trail mix. That's what I do. And I laid there, and I dreamed about taking the piece of that spot away with me and giving it to the world. It all came together in that moment. The sweet taste of chocolate still on my tongue and the warm rays of the sun on my cheek. I was engulfed in absolute pure beauty. So I'll tell you this, the past few months for me have been really, really difficult. Work has become absolutely overwhelming with last-minute requirements, last-minute tasks, and this constant federal bureaucracy coming at me from like every single direction. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty about the future for me right now. And there are many times when I wake up And when I close my eyes, those fears and those worries are just still there. I do my best to live that spiritual life, but sometimes it's just gotten too harried and too hurried and too just disjointed for me to feel anything but scared. And despite all my efforts to try to balance and connect all those different pieces together, all those different pieces of my existence into some kind of whole, very often the best I can do is sort of push and pull all those fragments of my life into one pile and be glad I have that mess all in one spot. Sometimes all I can do is just put my head down and forge ahead with purpose and just get from one place to the next. The danger of such an approach is that many times I forge ahead so quickly that I miss something important or meaningful along the way. I regret the path I took, and I reach the end of many days feeling weak or down in the mind and in the body and in the spirit. But I think back to looking over that valley, and I think, I had finally stopped long enough to think of something other than my next steps. I had become aware of why I really go to the woods. And while I enjoy the physical challenge and the feeling of accomplishment and the solitude, what I really go out into nature for is the view, or to be more accurate, for the vision. As the film and the fog of every day builds up on my heart and my soul, I go to the woods to discover clarity and vision. There's a man called Howard Kleinbell. He's considered to be sort of the founder of modern pastoral psychotherapy. And he tells us that we humans are all spiritual creatures, whether or not we want to admit it, whether or not we have any interest in organized religion. I think that should come as good news for Unitarian Universalists, since we're neither very organized nor very spiritual sometimes. But he goes on to say, we live in our meanings and in our hopes and beliefs about what ultimately is important in ourselves and our world. And by these hopes and beliefs and the religious practices that may express them, you and I create meaning in our turbulent lives. Without at least a minimal sense of meaning, we cannot be sane or whole. So, without at least a minimal sense of meaning, we cannot be sane or whole. That just rings so true for me. And I first read those words at probably 25, 30 years ago, and it still rings so true. We can get so busy and so fixated on the destination that everything in between just becomes a monotonous slog to a dark end. Now, that may be a good synopsis of the existentialist outlook on life, but it is not at all a life-affirming outlook. Like being in the thick woods with little to see, our daily living can become a jumble of branches and underbrush with nothing distinctive to add color or beauty or wonder to our lives. And in all that, it's easy to get lost in the many fragments of our living. The bits and pieces don't always fit together, do they? That fog rolls in on our souls, and it forms a film on our hearts. And we need to remember every now and then to stop and take in the view, or maybe more accurately, get a vision that brings some sense of order and meaning to our turbulent lives. So I laid there for a while, and I took a few long, deep, slow breaths, and the smell of fresh pine and the clean feeling of fresh air, the gentle whisper of creation in the distance spoke to me. And I thought, what if I had decided to move on? What if I had seen my destination more clearly than where I was situated in that very present moment? And that's when it came to me in a flash, as all these rules of the trail do. Never fail to stop at a good view, because it's too easy to miss those things. They come with incredible frequency if you think about it, yet they are experienced very rarely. The need to drive on, to get to the end, to reach a goal, sometimes blinds us to the awe and the wonder all around us. So never fail to stop at a good view, because the next time you pass one, you may not be looking. And when beauty passes you by, it can be very hard to discover it again. So never fail to stop at a good view. In that place, I was touched by something sacred. I realized that beauty comes on many levels. There is this aesthetic element of beauty, the beauty of the wooded valley, the blue sky, or the sun. Those things resonate with our minds and our hearts in ways that speak meaning and beauty to us. There's the beauty of the whisper of a friend. There's the beauty of a symphony. There's the beauty of that natural symphony that happens when the birds are singing and the wind is blowing. There's the beauty of a work of art whose lines and colors and composition conform to particular definitions of beauty. But there is an even deeper level of beauty where we can experience it directly, a level at which beauty touches us in a way that brings meaning and order and even purpose to our disparate lives. This experience of beauty allows us to step back from it all and begin to gather our lives into something that makes sense. If our everyday lives can be mixed up and confused, that experience can bring us a sense of order. And perhaps, I think, it is what Rudolf Otto, the theologian, called the mysterium tremendum in his book, The Idea of the Holy. He said, we are dealing with something for which there is only one appropriate expression, mysterium tremendum. The feeling of it may at times come sweeping like a gentle tide, pervading the mind with a tranquil mood of deepest worship. It may pass over into a more set and lasting attitude of the soul, continuing, as it were, thrillingly and vibrant and resonant until at last it dies away and the soul resumes its profane, non-religious mood of everyday experience. It has its crude, barbaric antecedents and early manifestations, and again, it may be developed into something beautiful and pure and glorious, the hushed, trembling, and speechless humility of a creature in the presence of whom or what? In the presence of that which is a mystery inexpressible and above all creatures. But we can only find that mysterium tremendum. We can only see it, we can only feel it if we remember to stop for a good view. Now, in one sense, beauty isn't really necessary for life, is it? We can survive absolutely fine without anything beautiful in our lives. Now, our living would be just that, survival. And survival that would be bland and dark, but we could survive without beauty. But on a deeper level, beauty is really a necessity of life as much as food and water, because it is the presence of beauty in our lives that allows us to put the disparate fragments of ourselves into a meaningful whole. Now, when I moved into my new office building in a new building on Fort Bragg, I was immediately struck with the fact that the Army loves the color green, gray, and pale yellow. And everything in there was green and gray and pale yellow. And I immediately went out and I bought all this beautiful artwork to put on the walls, because you need that beauty
to open us up to something larger. And you really don't want to walk into the chaplain's office and be struck with pale yellow ugliness. You want to see something beautiful. See, seeing and knowing beauty in this sense is a reminder that we are part of something larger and more powerful than we can truly understand. The deepest experiences of beauty are not simply the recognition of the beautiful thing, but an experience of what holds reality together at its deepest level. At times like these, beauty comes as an emotion, as a feeling, as a direct experience of something to which we are deeply connected, not just an intellectual experience. And we need those times in our lives, not only because our lives would be bland and dull without them, but because without them, our lives would remain fragmented and disconnected from the larger reality of which we are a part. That deep experience of beauty raises us above the ordinary and helps us collect our vision. In seeing this deep beauty and wonder, in awe, the small pieces can begin to fit together. Right? All those fragments that we have to push together and just try to make into one can start to fit together into a whole. And, if we can't put them together into a whole, at least we can see the fragments as part of a whole that has yet to be created. But we can all too easily look at what is ahead rather than as what is right here in front of us right now. We can pass by the opportunities to experience beauty and wonder and awe as we just put our heads down and forge on with a purpose. But I wonder, are those opportunities to experience beauty all that rare? Do I have to wait until I get to the right place and the perfect time to experience the beauty that is all around me? The grand view, the high vista, maybe those are rare. Maybe I have to go find those, but perhaps beauty can be found in many other places besides these. Perhaps beauty is all around us and we just fail to see it. But if we were to stop and choose to look purposely for the beautiful, could our lives be filled with those high vistas and those beautiful experiences I had on that rock ledge every single day? Is the holy as close as our willingness to stop and look for it? The truth is that opportunities to see and experience beauty are all around us in every single moment, but we miss them because, I'm gonna stop using that we for a second, because really I know that the opportunities to see and experience beauty are all around me in every moment. And I know I miss them because I'm too busy forging on, or because I have already decided what I know is beauty before I ever get to the view. Like all those rules of the trail, there is no need for me to go any further than my own backyard to practice them. And so never fail to stop at a good view means never stop looking for the beauty and wonder around you. Never believe that beauty is too far away to discover. And if you hear only one thing in this entire sermon, if you hear me say only one thing, if you remember only one thing I say, remember this: never believe that you do not deserve beauty in your life. Never believe that you do not deserve beauty in your life. Look into the eyes of your love. Listen to the robins singing in the midst of an urban park. Hold your child's hand. Feel the mystery of your own beating heart. And know that beauty abounds right here and now. So as I laid there on that ledge, the sun slowly dipped below the horizon, and the last light of day disappeared on the other side of the world, and I donned my headlamp and I began the careful climb downward over the rocks. I could not help but see the metaphor I was enacting. I had just been sitting high above the valley, engulfed in warmth and beauty, and now the darkness had come and I descended into the valley. I left the beauty behind, and now I could only travel on with the darkness as my only partner. And sometimes near midnight, I finally laid secure in my sleeping bag. But in another miraculous moment, the darkness was not a bitter reminder of what I had left behind, but rather it was just another permutation of what was all around me all the time. The night was complete, and the silence was perfect. And I listened to the breezes and the flowing stream as I drifted off to sleep. And my last thought before sleep came upon me was, even in the darkness, the view remains. Even in the nighttime, beauty abounds. And so it is with all our lives. Look for the beauty that is all around you. It is there. It's all around you. It's in you. It is with you. It matters not where you are, high above the valley or in its darkest depths. Like a voice still and small, deep inside all, in storm and rain, in sorrow and pain, still that beauty remains, always singing with you. So my friends, I pray that beauty will find you wherever you are at, but I pray even more that you will look for beauty in every single moment of your life.